Mental Maps is brought to you by Aruka Well. Aruka Well is a virtual holistic mental health service providing psychiatric evaluations, holistic interventions, and when needed, medication management. For more information, check out Aruka Well at www.arukawell.co. That's www.arukahwell.co. Welcome back to Mental Maps. As always, I hope this finds you well, no matter what season of life you're in. Today, I am honored to have one of my very, very, very good friends, author, coach, model, actor, the whole shebang, Connor Callahan. Man, welcome, brother.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you. Great way to spend the morning, getting to connect
Yeah.
with you, thinking things that, man, this is outstanding.
Dude, it's so cool. When I created the podcast a couple years ago, there's like a handful of people you have like on your list. Like it's someday like you want to sit down and like record something. And this is like you were on that list. I was like, at some point, Connor's gonna find his way on here. But I didn't think it was going to be with you writing this incredible book, man. I
Right.
love it. It's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I knew our paths would cross again, especially in this world. You and I always talking in the ways that we do and having so many of the same interests, can't. It was going to happen. It was bound to happen. And here we are.
Yeah, and so that's kind of one of the reasons I wanted to have you on. I've been working through your book, The Results Blueprint. It's going to hit the market on the 23rd of April, correct?
That's right. Yep. Coming
Right
out
on.
23rd.
Yeah, and so it'll be out there. We'll talk a little bit more about how people can find it shortly. But man, this book is so interesting. And I would love just to kind of riff on before we jump into all the stuff. Like, what is this book? Like, where did this come from?
Okay, so this book is the first ever self-help strategy book, and it actually it guides you to strategize your way to results that are meaningful, lasting, and that will actually get you where you want to be in 90 days. I can guarantee that. And that's not from some gimmicky thing. It actually works. And the reason why I wrote it wasn't because I wanted to just sell this thing. I was at a place in my life where I needed it. So
Mm.
strangely enough, this results blueprint it came from years of going. So for the past 11 years, I've gone and worked with Fortune 500 companies. I go and work with teams, and those within those teams, building stronger um, teamwork, trust, communication, all of these things. And so after years of doing this, I was able to fine tune exactly what worked. And what's interesting is that I finally put it together. I'd just gone and worked with this awesome client down in Miami, was driving back, and it was just like, this is what you got to do. Because as you know, I've been working on
Mhm.
a few books at this time, and so
Yeah.
so this was the one where it was like, no, I need you to do this right now. And so
Mhm.
I try to live my life in faith and obedience. And so I was like, okay, I'm on it. You need me to do it. I'm on it. I'll give it my all. And what's interesting is I used the results blueprint, my own results blueprint, to write the results blueprint in under, I think it was like 16 days. And within that time, I had the two different bugs that were going around for the holidays because this was December. And so
Yeah.
I had like the stomach flu, and then I had some other thing, I mean, debilitating. So you have to know that like 6 or 7 of those days, I wasn't I was incapacitated, and it still got done. And that's the beauty of it. That's what this blueprint does. Now, what's interesting as well is it's not cookie cutter, one size fits all. The blueprint is a system. You could describe it as an algorithm, step by step by step. But your blueprint would be wildly different than mine, and it is tailored to you. It gets the best out of you, and is designed for you by you, and that's the beauty of it. And
Mm.
so this is this I published these a little interestingly. So this is the one that I put out first, but there's 3 books in this series. This is going to be
Okay.
the life blueprints, and so this is the results blueprint. And so this is all about engineering that results that you're looking for,
Mhm.
engineering the success that you've been after your entire life. And I think we're all ready for that.
And I think that brings up you made a statement, a strategy of self-help. Like, so what does that mean? Because I mean, there's so much noise right now, right? In the self-help world, there's all these different kind of biohacks, and you have like food world, and you have like self-care world, and coping skill world, and emotion world, and thought world. What is a strategy for self-help? Like, what makes that different?
Strategy for self-help allows you to get into the trenches and actually make adjustments on a day-to-day
Mm,
basis, because the effort that you're doing on a day-to-day basis is finite. We have energy and we have opportunities, and you have to know exactly what to do and where to put your energy where. And then you also need to know what it is that you're working towards. So everybody, I like to say, this is, I guess this is one of my quotes, but everybody is one buy away from an actual strategy. Okay, so what
mm,
I mean by that is most of us kick off and we have wild objectives and we're so excited, right? We're like, I'm going to lose all this weight. Okay. And the objective could even be something a little bit more fine tuned, where it's, I'm going to lose, 10 pounds. Okay. And those are objectives. Those are vague goals. So
mhm,
it gets you to completely set a goal that is specific and finite, but then it also makes it time bound. It also works for your what motivates you, because some of us don't even know what it is that actually motivates us. But on top of that, then we go into what I describe as key moves. Key moves are things that allow you to actually fine tune and look at what it is. This is how we make tweaks. This is how we make adjustments, right? Because whenever you are in service of those around you, but also the results that you're looking for, well, then you're going to show up every day. And so you start to get into things like the showing up equation. But from this, if we can actually break down step by step, so I'm going to lose 10 pounds by,
mm,
going to the gym and dieting. Okay, by, and then researching what gyms are near me and finding out what diet is going to be best for me. By, and so you break these down until you get finite. You actually have an exact detail. Now, the interesting side of this is that you can follow that train of thought almost infinitely, and you can get caught in the weeds pretty quickly. But this is how the results blueprint, one of the ways that the results blueprint helps you. So we use the lack of time to our benefit, because that's the best thing that we can do. So if I were to ask you, how would you get that done? What would you do? How would you get that done in 30 minutes? Right. And so your mind refuses to get overloaded. Prefrontal cortex isn't going to allow you to just, it's going to cut out all the fluff. And so you get an exact roadmap to how to get that done in 30 minutes. Now, it could be something where your goal is for some major goal that's going to need to be that needs to be accomplished by 12/31/2025. But we actually want to say something to the extent of before 12/31/2025.
mm,
You feel the difference. You feel now you know how much time you have. It's not that much. And so
mm,
we actually need to cut into that roadmap. Now, even if you have all that time, your mind will use all that time in the uh, system or whatever it decides for how to accomplish it.
mm,
Well, that's not beneficial to us, because the mind is very good at kind of adding steps that may not need to be there.
mhm.
That's why we use the lack there of time. So once you say, okay, well, how would we get that done in 30 minutes? And you should see some of the looks on some of my clients' faces whenever
Yeah,
I'm in these big meetings, and they just told me some outlandish thing, and I'm like, okay, well, there is a way to do this, so
yeah.
I'm waiting. I'm not gonna like, I'm just, what do you guys come up with? Anything works. Throw it at me. What are we doing? And so if time, money, and all these other things aren't an issue, you'd be shocked at what you actually realize you can accomplish. And this is where we look into how are we, because leverage, the only thing you should ever be leveraging is, well, the big three, right? Time, money, and opportunity. So if you have one, there's other people around you who have all the rest. That's for a different conversation.
Mm,
But
yeah.
but this is really where it gets down to the roadmap that you decide in that 30 minutes, whatever comes up that actually is feasible, that will actually help you and help you to accomplish what it is you're looking for, that can give you the best roadmap to fill out on your day-to-day life. And so you get
Mhm,
three things that you do. You break those down into three key moves. So three actions that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And you try to, you go after it. Now, the interesting thing, of course, is what three things are the most important. Where do we get into these? Where do you
mhm,
find these? So again, tailoring that to you and to the results that you're exactly looking for. But now you can see on a day-to-day basis, I can check in and I can say, well, did that work? Did that not work? Rather than just not knowing, rather than
yeah.
trying to change every aspect of your life for no reason. There's things, or you see people in different elements where they live unhappy and they want to go run off to create some different life, feeling like they need to disconnect from everything when it's here, it's now, it's already, it's
Mm,
you can do it right
mm.
now.
Man, that hits home sometimes too, right? Yeah, and I think what I like about what you just said, what I like about in the book is that buy concept, right? Because I think so many times we get this information and it's like, oh, well, if I just do these like three things, and I'll feel better, or like if I do that, but then your brain's like, well, you can't do that, you don't have the money, or you don't have the time, oh, you got to pay a mortgage, or oh, you got kids, or whatever that looks like, right? But what you've kind of forced to do in this is that continue to put a buy and a buy and a buy. And so then you finally get to a place where there has to be an action you can do. Whereas
Mm,
before, when you're looking at it so far out, it's like, how am I going to lose 20 pounds in 3 months? But if you put that buy on it over and over and over, it gets to an action that has to be obtainable because ultimately,
right.
like you personalize it. And
Completely.
I think that's so interesting. And that, you mentioned too, the blueprint being different for each person. One of the things I got as I was reading that book was this is a book where you could give this to 100 people and there would be 100 different views of it.
Mm,
And like very few times do you get like a self-help kind of book, right? It's personalized in certain ways. Normally, it's like if you just do these five things, then you're going to feel better, or you just do this one thing, you'll feel better. But like one person can see it in a completely different way than another person does, and I think that's kind of what it caters to. Is everybody's buy is different, and I think that's super interesting. You mentioned in the discussion you're talking about, and what I think is probably the coolest part of this whole book is working on yourself, achieving your results through serving others. Like, tell us about that. What is that? Because that is so wild from this world
yeah.
that we live in today, right? Like, go get yours, get stoked, do the whole thing. Like, where does that come from? Like, what is this?
It comes from trial and error and failure on my behalf for a long time, and not seeing that as probably one of the things that kept me back for so long was, and we all, we fall victim of it. And so right now, in today's society especially, we live in a society where they really push hustle, grind, all you, it's all on you, it's all on your shoulders, right? And then one thing that was, I love the movie, don't get me wrong, but Limitless, right? And I talk
Mm,
about this, pretty much every week, that we were sold that Limitless was in the form of a pill, and it's not.
mm,
It's not. You want to become limitless, you start looking to those around you. You want to become limitless. Let me throw this out there, because I think anytime I get into these, I want to help people. So that's my motive. So
mm,
whatever else may come, if you're listening to this, start doing this every single day. I want you to think back to the person who was the most important person in your life, your favorite person growing up. And what did they do for you? How did they make you feel this way? What made them your favorite person? I can track back and I can tell you right now, because you just pictured them and you probably thought of a very, valuable memory. And within that, I'm going to tell you right now that you can become anyone's favorite person around you. You should start becoming everyone's favorite person around you. And the way that you do this is by building trust. There's three specific things you can do to build trust. Dr. Brene Brown, uh, outstanding, outstanding person. So,
yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm going to completely tell everyone what it is that she explains much better than I ever will. So just take that. Listen without judgment, champion every effort, and celebrate every victory, no matter how small. You track back and you start looking and you start thinking of the most, the your favorite people growing up or in your life whatsoever. That's how they showed up for you. That is what they
Mm,
offered to you. This is what happens whenever you have respect for someone. This is what happens whenever you have unconditional love for someone. Now, I'm not saying, that we're going to have that for everyone, but it is the way that you have to show up. This is a non-negotiable. This is how you choose to live your life. You have that choice, you have that opportunity. Now, whenever you start showing up for people around you and you start bringing out their best, you start making sure that you are respecting everyone, giving them your best, well, you're going to be surrounded by their best. You're going to be surrounded
mm.
by the best. And what happens whenever we're surrounded by the best? It brings out our
Gotta
best.
elevate. Yeah, it brings up
Right.
your best.
Exactly. And so it's through not only being of service of our craft or being of service of what we say that we want to accomplish or being of service of the people that are connected to that or being around that. it's being in service of every single person that you meet, being in service of every opportunity, every relationship in your life. Because whenever you look back, and this is where we have to take ownership of our life, I want you to think of taking ownership in a different way. So, in regards to taking ownership is deciding how you want to look back on this situation, deciding how you want to look back on your life, deciding how you want to look back on today, and holding yourself accountable for
Mm.
that memory. No one else, no, there's no circumstance, there's no person, there's nothing that is going to get in the way of you taking accountability whenever you start to do this, whenever you decide how you want your life to be on a day to day basis, and then show up in that way. Because I guarantee you there are going to be things that get in the way every single day.
Mm.
But you gave your word. This is how you wanted to look back on your life. And because whenever it's all said and done, the only thing that's left are memories, the memories you have of your life and the memories that other people have of you. And so, whenever you're able to access this and look at it from that perspective first, then you realize that you have an opportunity to leave your mark. Now, if you
Mm.
accomplish all of your key moves on a day-to-day basis and you show up in the way that you are supposed to, then you get the opportunity to leave your mark. And what will happen is you'll start to leave your mark on a day-to-day basis. You show up, put it on a wall, put it in a journal. I recommend having it out somewhere that you get excited to see it in, in your space and leave your
Mm.
mark. What will happen is every day you start to notice that the mark that you're leaving is a little different. And then after a few of these really track and you start to build something special in your life, next thing you know, you're leaving a mark and you're realizing, wow, I don't have a lot of time to leave very many of these. And
Mm.
if we're really being honest with ourselves and we think back from here, because now you know that you're going to start doing this, you're actually going to change your life. If you look back on the days that you've already allowed past, how many of those days would get a mark?
Mm.
And it you have the opportunity to change your life. You have every opportunity, and there's nothing standing in your way. And so I want to see everyone living their best, and that's why I wrote it. I wrote it for myself. I wrote it for
Yeah,
everybody else.
right on. And I think it's so interesting because you bring up the concept of like of leaving your mark through service, which then elevates the people around you. And I think as me and you were preparing for this, I was thinking the other day, like when I was in meditation, of like, what is the difference between people pleasing and service, which we can talk about that here in a second. But then the first thing is service and helping, because in like healthcare, for example, like we call ourselves helpers a lot, and I always believe that like in the helper world, that means there's this power differential, right? That I have something that I'm going to help you with, right? Like I've got some version of power, but in the concept of service, you're kind of relinquishing that power, saying I'm here to serve you, I'm here to serve the world, I'm here to improve the world, not from a sense of power that I'm better or I have something that I'm just going to serve. And I think that's what's interesting is that you bring in this concept of like self-help or like achieving your own results and your own goals, not from, oh, I'm better or oh, this is great or oh, like you deserve this, but that like you're serving others and it makes other people better around you and it helps the world to leave that mark. Like, how do you find, I think for someone that kind of sits in that, how do you find that balance? Like, how do you see life through service rather than the power of me helping or just, that kind of stuff?
It goes all the way back down to the the very basis of how you're living your life,
Mm.
because you you're in service of something. Some of us are just they aren't or we aren't we don't like the answer of what it is that we're in service of right now. And so if you really start and from that beginning space of what am I in service of? Well, you're in service of holding yourself to your best,
Mm.
doing the things that are necessary to bring your best on a day-to-day basis. We talk about those who are, they strive. There's people who are far beyond on that journey than I am. And you brought up in regards to meditation or holding that which I forget the exact brain frequency of that, but what is it? Is it alpha? And then it goes to, I forget which is the
The
top, the
beta
gamma.
waves and
And
yeah.
yeah, the top ones. And so aligning yourself and setting yourself up in that regard, well, you have to be in service of bringing your best, which in its own right, um, there's many names, and I recommend everybody go down that path. Whenever
Mhm.
you start and you recognize that you're in service of everything, so you're in service of the quality of your life, you're in service of the,
Ooh,
the quality of your health, you're in service of the quality of your relationships, you're in service of the quality of your dreams, your dreams coming to life. You start to realize that it all comes from within us, and that's why this it's not help, it's service. Because in the same way that whenever you take that on and you recognize that you are, we're a community, and we're a community of those of people who want to achieve our best and who want to help others achieve their best. And there is no, what's the term for that? There's no podium, there's no
yeah.
there's no championship in that. We're all in it together. And so, yeah, that's really, it's just making that time, uh and making sure that we show up in the way that we're supposed to for ourselves and for others. And whenever we start doing that, you can access it in different ways. It's kind of the same thing. It's where you have the triangle, right? If you work a lot, then you'll have more money, but you won't have time, right? If you don't work a lot, you'll have plenty of time. And so it's like, it's just interesting how you decide where to put your time and your energy and what
Mhm.
is happening. But there's no winners and losers. We're all in this together. And so if you're in service of that, and you show up for others in that way, and you keep your mind off the other things, because anybody who's successful has told you it's a numbers game. If you're focused on the outcome, if you're focused on the results, then you're never going to get it. All you can
Mhm.
focus on is the input. And that's really what it comes down to, is helping others to change that mindset of what's the input. And if your input is from a place of service, from a place of absolute, I care more about what this is going to do for you and how this is going to achieve your dreams and
Mhm.
goals than anything else. Imagine this. I love this. I love this thought, because I talk to people about it a lot. Imagine someone came up to you and they said, "What's your goal? What's your dream?" Right? And you're like, why are you asking?" They're like, "I'm a billionaire. My passion is to get things off the ground. I don't want anything to do, I don't need anything else. I've been so fortunate, I've been so blessed. I just want to help you. I want to, you're the person today. Lucky you." And you're like, "Oh my gosh, okay." Well, first, if you don't know what you want, anybody who's listening to this, start to ask yourself, don't ask yourself, "What do I want?" I want you to go from the back end. Someone came up to you and said, "I'm going to give you um, what you want." I want you to think, "Well, okay, that's exactly what I wanted. How did they know that?" Ask yourself, what's exactly what I wanted, or picture exactly what you want. There's something about that where your mind won't allow you to, like, lie to yourself, because it knows the quality and the value of this. But then from beyond this, so if that person were to genuinely go every step of the way and are like, "No, we're setting this up for you. This is happening. Here's your dreams, wild success." What would you do for that person? To what lengths would you go for that
Mm.
person in life? What would that person become in your life? Right? Would you not do everything you could, not to pay them back, but just anyone that you spoke of about that person? You'd be like, I can't even describe to you how outstanding this person. I'm like, this is, and if and you have the opportunity to show up for anyone in your life like that. You
Mm.
have these are the people we want to be surrounded by. That's the version of you that everybody wants to be surrounded by. And so
Yeah.
whenever you access it, yeah, your life
Yeah, I mean, it's just
changes.
being a good steward of what you have.
Yeah.
you know and I think and it's so interesting how, like, when you look through history, right, or even like not even just in history, and like writings, right, like religious texts and different things, like from like the teachings of like Jesus of Nazareth to the stuff from the Dalai Lama, it's all going back to what's the greatest thing to lay down your life for your brother, right? What the Dalai Lama says, what's the greatest, or how can you create joy serving others? Where do you think that we like lost that as you kind of set with these people, especially even people who are like wildly successful and still lose it? Like, where, or when I say successful from like a financial perspective, like how do you lose that viewpoint?
Scarcity and fear.
Mm,
That's it. And the the identity. You really you really lose it in the identity. Um because we break that down into a way where we recognize ourselves as nouns, right? People, places, things, but then we
Mhm.
identify those nouns. And then within that, within any noun that you break down within society, you're going to have a stereotype, and that stereotype that's connected to it is, it's good, it's not bad, it's just the process of the mind recognizing and analyzing functional fixedness, or looking for, because slowly but surely the things around us become functionally fixed. If I
Mhm.
were to come to you a few times and then, I have, questions, or let's say you gave me the wrong answer and then I got in trouble at work, what's my functional fixedness at that point? I
Mhm.
never ask that person a question again. That person has no good, right? It's like, and so
Yes.
that's how we start to see things through the lens of, now this is fine, this is good, because like I need to know, if I look at a fork, I need to have functional fixedness and have, but it's from that part of the brain where
Mhm.
we start to overdo that. And then the okay, so like with what's happening now, anybody who's watching, that's great, but be very mindful of what you input in regards to the screens, in regards to,
Mhm.
like the what you're listening to, because it trains your mind on what to see, it trains your mind on what to think, and you have that opportunity to set that narrative. If you're not setting that narrative, somebody is setting it for you. And this is, again, all these, it all builds up. It's there's a few things that you could track it to, but at the end of the day it comes back down to scarcity and fear. Because whenever people want it now, I get into this as well, people want it now, I get into it, or I'm not happy where I'm at, why isn't it this way, like, no, it's whenever you start looking at your life, and whether you are whatever religion you believe in, start saying this on a day-to-day basis, this feels great.
Mhm.
Just start saying, I say thank you God, but you can just say thank you. Thank you. My life is ultimate bliss. Thank you. Say
Mhm.
that repeatedly until you can't take the smile off your face. And I guarantee you the things that are going to start happening on a day-to-day basis is pretty incredible. But these are things that are a part of the change blueprint, which I'm sure I'll be back on your podcast to explain a lot more about.
Yeah.
But this is I will say the importance of being able to start from that space, and living in abundance, and living in excitement and gratitude, because gratitude is laughter, and if you're not laughing, then you're not, or if you're not in gratitude, then you're not having fun, if you're not having fun, you're not laughing. And
Mhm.
so that's something that I track back to, which is interesting, because the showing up equation. So the first chunk of time, and kids are really good at this because they don't have that rigid, oh, I can't mess up, oh, I need to be perfect, oh, why am I not like them, right? That
Mhm.
you're judging yourself, you're anyways, I was about to go off on another tangent. I'm really good at that. So, but kids are really good at this because you're like, give this a try, do this right now. And they do it, right? Well, the first week, if not, however long it takes, the first 10, 15 days, you're gonna mess up. That's life, right? You're building new neural pathways in your brain. You've never done this before in your life. And you get on there and you decide, oh, I'm gonna do this, or oh, I'm gonna try this. Well, here's the thing, you already have an expert level of judgment in regards to almost everything in life at this point, unless you're just like completely thrown out. That's why people like to
Mhm.
travel, because they have no frame of reference. But based on the way that we've been raised, and especially in our culture, all of us, like if you put on a song, most of everybody has a very high, if not expert level of judgment to be able to tell, like, oh, that's a good song, oh, that's a bad song. So whenever you go to start doing something, let's say you're playing music, you are judging yourself through that filter, not
Mhm.
through the filter of you being able to do something. And
Mhm.
so that's why the first week, 10 days, however long until you get out of that chunk of time, I tell people to try to make it as funny as possible at how bad you're messing
Mhm.
up. Right? If you go into it with like it just rolls off and you can't help but just have a blast with how funny it is at how bad you're doing, then you're in the flow. Nothing is going to stand you right. Your ego never has a chance to jump in and constrict. And then, like, if you've ever seen somebody who's doing something, they don't realize that people are watching them, or they don't realize they're in like a scary situation.
Mhm.
Nothing ever changes. And then the moment that the ego realizes and looks around and goes, oh no, done, right? You see it. It's like an immediate, and you're like, no, no, you were doing so good. Just keep going. No, you were so good. Right. So we have to be willing to go through that. Now, on these beginning days, you're going to the everything starts to add up. And then as time, quickly shifts through, it turns into multiplication because every day that you stack from then on out are multiplying upon themselves because you are getting incrementally faster and better. Now you're not going to see those in those trenches because those days are just, you're going to go through highs and lows. But then suddenly you hit later on where you hit automaticity, and that's whenever we hit compounding. And then compounding happens, and suddenly that's where the greats, you look at them and you go, how did they do that? How did they do that? And it's interesting because I've noticed this, and I everything that I've come up with, I will say, yes, I've worked with people, but I always track it back to self-reflection. And so if it's not true for myself, I would never tell somebody it's true for them. And also if this none of this has sounded right for anyone listening, then by all means, all I can say is, I took this from myself, so I get it, I get it. Um, but let's say that you watch somebody do something for the first time and it's an explainer video or it's like they're doing something on YouTube, let's say that. And you watch them all the way through and they get to the end. There's a point where you watch them achieve this success and then you're like, how did they do that? Even
Mm,
though they just showed you the entire way, you get to like this 75, 80% where you're just like, how did they do that? Like that's not how it works for me. How did they do that? And so that's really where it's interesting. We see that, and that's why we tune in to watch the greats and we watch the best. But then as soon as we you know shut it off, we go back to our lives to be distracted by something else. What do you think that person is going to do?
yeah.
They're going to do the three main things that keep them at that highest level. And from those three things, it breaks down to technically like nine things, because you have your three key moves or three um, actions that you're doing for the key move.
And that's all in the book, right? Yeah.
Yeah, all of this is
Awesome.
so.
Well,
Yeah,
one of the things you just brought something up that was so interesting, and I get this working with people too, and I know like I've said this to myself, right? Like, how many times that we as adults want to learn something new? We're like, can't learn it now. We're an adult, and like we try to say that our hardwire isn't good enough, right? Like, oh, we can't learn like we once did as kids, but we actually have more hardwire now than we did as kids, like from a brain perspective. Like we have more hardwire, we have more ability to like contemplate things, we can see things in a much like bigger like a larger expanse, everything. But what you're saying is it has way more to do with how we view ourselves and being able
absolutely.
to not look at that. So, I mean, I know like different things I've learned as an adult, right? Like trying to learn how to snowboard or like surf or those different things where you get on it and immediately like you lock in, you're like, I want to be the best.
Hmm.
And like for most kids, that's not a thing, right? Like if like take anything you learned as a kid. I don't remember ever like doing that at like 6 and thinking, I want to be the best at this. You're just like, this is really fun to do. And
Right.
so like when you remove that, you can learn anything.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And so I guess that's part of this like movement in getting to your results is that in kind of like what we're talking about, one of the reasons you may not have found yourself achieving what you want to achieve is maybe driven by that, right?
There's multiple aspects that it can come back to. First is what you're describing. Let's follow
Mm,
this train of thought because I love it. So let's go on the idea of someone who wants to learn surfing and they get out there
yeah,
and the first thing they want to do is become the best. Like they get on the
yeah,
board and they're like, I'm gonna do this, right?
yeah.
Whereas what probably should have, been tracked is, okay, well, let's say that your goal is that I want to be the best surfer
Mm,
by or before and then whatever date. Let's say you're only there for 3 days, right?
mhm,
Well, let's say that your goal then is not to just be the best. Let's say you're going to try to be the best at that beach
mm,
before, and then you have the exact date that you're leaving, right? So that way you have the amount of time that we're working towards. So now we have an idea. Well, how would you get that done in 30 minutes? Okay, well, within 30 minutes, you need to. Well, I've never surfed before in my life. That's not me. I'm just saying for
mm.
anybody who's
Yeah.
like following this. Well, then you would need to get really good at surfing. Okay, what are the three main things of surfing? Well, paddling out is already like I can
Yeah.
tell you right now. Don't even worry about standing up.
Yeah.
Paddling out is ridiculous. And then from that, being able to pop up. And then the next one would be being able to balance. So
Mm,
those would be the three things that we need to work on. Okay, so then how do I get better at said things. How do I get better at paddling out? I'm getting better at paddling out by building up my back strength and making sure that my shoulders are healthy and strong. Okay. By and so then you would look up the top three things that are going to allow you to make sure that you're, not only are you
Mm,
stretching and that you're able to do these things because you need to,
mhm,
that's going to allow you to ensure that you don't get injured on the second day and have no
mhm,
chance of becoming the best surfer at said beach before the last day of your trip.
mhm,
So now we have one key move, which is going to help us paddling out and getting out into so that way we have a chance to get on the board. Next is going to be popping up. So, so then you have your key move of, popping up by. And so being able to even do a pop-up, okay, and then buy. And so that's going to have this person out on the same beach, never even getting in the water, practicing their pop-ups, you know. And
mhm,
then on the last day or on the third step is working on balance. Okay, working on balance by, and there's different things you can do, like one-legged things. You can do the band where you're actually standing on it. And what you find is rather than going and throwing yourself into that ocean and killing yourself for the first 2 days and having no opportunity to ever even get on the board, the first, it's that sharpening your axe theory, right, where you
mm,
actually do the
mm,
things that are going to get you to that goal. And that's where people get it completely confused all
mhm.
the time. In the same regards, let's take this out of the surfing world. Let's take this into learning a new language, like you had said.
Yeah.
If you look at how children learn a language, it's very fun, it's so engaging, right? It's like they use the words in ways where they're just like book, 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 book. Mommy, can I have a book? Right? They really
Yeah.
like lean into this thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like that's the thing I'm doing today. So
Yeah.
it turns into more of an activity of having fun with your mouth, which
Yeah.
gosh, I can't believe I just said that on a podcast. So as you're saying this, as you're doing this, right, you're enjoying the way that it's coming out. Now, the other side of this is there is so much fun in getting recognition and validation from your peers around you. So you have to understand that as children, we give them that value in the same way that I described earlier with that trust, right?
Mhm,
Because as children, even though they are precious and they are, like every family member shows up for them in that way, um, whenever it comes to the power, because our communication styles and things of that nature, we inherently understand power. It's just it's
mhm,
interesting how all that works, and so we see it as a form of getting that form of power or getting recognition, or and this also tracks back to identity, which is what we were talking about earlier. And so every time that they use the right word or they say the right thing, how do people show up for them? They're excited. They're like, oh yes,
mhm,
oh, did you hear what they just said, right? So they're constantly being rewarded in this regard, but meanwhile they're taking steps farther into in that space of recognition and power within the family, right? Incrementally, and then we may not even know it, but that's what's happening in the brain. And then lastly, they want to be included in the conversation. There's inclusion, there's community based. So if you really lean into those three things, that's why they say you have to go to other countries and immerse yourself. That's why, me just sitting here on Duolingo doesn't connect. Because there's no need. I'm not going to die if I don't use the right word.
mhm,
Because I know that everybody around me is going to understand what I'm saying at any point in time. So, but the last thing I'll say in that is going back to that self identity. These are things that you can track back to and say, whenever you see yourself and you visualize that, if you got a chance to meet the most amazing version of yourself, right? And so visualize the whole process. You go into a coffee shop, you're waiting, you're a little bit nervous and anxious, and then that person walks in and they are just everything that you've always aspired to be. They've done everything you've ever wanted to do and you're blown away. Well, you have to start living into that energy, into
mhm.
that persona. And so, but again, it's incremental. It's being willing to let go of things that have gotten in the way of you becoming you who you are now and who that is, because we are who we are because of the things that we've chosen, that we've
Would you almost say too, like as I hear that, right? Like, when we start using, children and how children learn, and even as you take the ego out of it, one, because some of it's not there yet from a hardwire perspective, and also it's just not kind of formed into it yet. There is this concept where like if we're learning to obtain like a version of power, if we're learning to learn, if we're learning to have fun, that is helpful. But if we're trying to compete with someone, and listen, I love to compete, but if we're trying to compete with someone, we can't learn something to try to compete. And I think that I would imagine that's what you see a lot for a lot of people is like you enter that business world or you enter anything and even the surf lineup, whatever. And it's not, hey, I want to learn this to learn it. It's like, I want to be the best. I want to get to that person. And that person who's like, they're above you is not the person that you're trying to aspire to be, but they're the person you're trying to destroy, right? Or you're trying to get. And so there's like this huge shift where you immediately go into this survival, competitive, success driven kind of mode rather than, hey, I just want to learn for fun and kind of show up and be here and achieve a goal.
Yeah. Yeah, a large base of that is status. I mean,
Yeah.
we want to, we are dependent on that feeling of that best implies that someone has to be the worst,
Mm.
and that's I mean, listen, you can write my name down for tons of things on that worst list, and just is what it is, I mean, because those aren't things that I'm trying to do. So inherently, that's how it's going to be, but we don't have to look at it that way. And then whenever you take the idea of your value being based in how you show or how this accomplishment takes place or transpires, that's whenever you really take back your freedom and you actually have the opportunity to do something amazing.
Well,
That's
yeah.
at least that's what I found.
Yeah, because you think about it, like, kind of going back to the whole reason people kind of struggle. I mean, we all do this. We all kind of struggle to live into what you're talking about is the concept of scarcity,
Mhm.
And so if we believe there's scarcity, then we must obtain everything, right? And then like if we think that like if I'm the best, then someone has to be the worst, which if someone has to be the worst, then we can't be serving, right? Because like
Right.
ultimately I'm now in that power differential and maybe I'm helping, I can help someone because I'm doing that, but I've never thought of it that way that, any kind of achievement you have of being the best, then therefore someone must be the worst. And so how can you
Mhm.
be servicing other people if someone's the worst or you're making someone feel the worst?
Right.
Mm,
Uh, and that's actually where so in the book is structured into three different steps, which is
mm,
specify, strategize, dominate. And so dominate is not dominating anybody else around you. The only person, we hear it all the time, the only person that you're ever actually working against or are in competition of is yourself, the who you
mm,
were yesterday. And so that's what you're trying to dominate. You're trying to dominate the version of you that was yesterday that didn't know better, because you're wiser now. And hopefully your time spent even in the form of reflection, because if you are showing up for yourself through meditation or just through taking a journal, and you have these thoughts, be it before you go to bed or throughout the day, and you're writing something down for a little reflection, those are opportunities to really grow within who you are. Again, never trying to you know beat anybody else, because your value should never be wrapped up in that. It
mm,
just but
mm,
again, I'm not going to sit here and tell people that that's not the way that our society is, that is the way our society works. That
mm,
is the way our society is designed. It's
mm,
just now understanding that we are the world's working differently. Things are working so much faster. Things are, there's no going back. Even in like today, like now, like what we're doing. I want to be in service of bringing my best to you, in service of have like giving my best for my time of my knowledge to your viewers, to your listeners. That's all that I have the opportunity of, and the input. And having no there's no desire to keep anything from people, to like, oh no, I don't want to tell everybody everything. It's in no way, like just being in absolute service of, and helping anybody that I can, and let the chips fall where they may from there. And that's the only way that we're going to move forward. Because even in today's day and age, as I was saying, like you look at people who are making the most, like those are the people who are putting themselves out there on a day-to-day basis. If you really sit in that energy of making a lot of money, of getting all the things that society says boosts your status and gives you value, well, it tracks back to, money is just opportunity. Money is just,
Mm.
being in service. It really is. And I'm just going to tell you right now, like if I give you a ton of money, well, what are you going to have to do? Like what you can go, do whatever, but most of the time it's going to come back to opportunity and service, unless somebody just absolutely just wants to cash out and not do anything. But even then, that's a very rare, persona.
Yeah, man, it's like I know you and I've talked about this before, but and I talk about this with clients a lot too, that we all love the story of the billionaire who loses everything, but has the money and is like, oh crap, what have I done? And so then they go back and they start giving money and they find a significant other and they care for their family and all those things. And it's like that is kind of the world that we live in, right? Like do whatever you can possibly do to get to where you believe you need to be. And then we look back and like, oh man, I wish I would have spent more time with this person, or I wish I would have done more things. So I think as you kind of live into this world, especially if you're in the world of like money or status or whatever it is kind of what you're trying to achieve through the buys, how do you not get to that place? Like, how do you find yourself not becoming consumed in that so that you're not just always, going to do whatever it takes to shore your life, get the money, and then hope you get a chance to look backwards?
Obedience, and of being in service to, to life, to the people around me, to showing up. And there's things that I like to do on a day-to-day basis, which I can say is, for me, would be within the change blueprint. But this one was a result blueprint. It had to be a
Mm,
little, you have to do things specific at some point, so something that I like, that I would tell people to do is, to start out with, just start saying this sentence. Uh, I'm a simple person. You can say guy or gal, or however, however anybody identifies. I'm a simple, and then from that, say three things. You choose your three things. I'm a simple, but I like blah blah and blah. Just make it extremely simple,
mm,
and really start to plant that seed of who you are in that time period, and only show up for that, and almost make it, something that you're proud that people know, that you're like, I like this and this, right? And then you can really hopefully refine that so that they all build up to this persona that you're trying to go to. Now, from that, on a day-to-day basis, you have to let things go. You have to be willing to, because if you have control of the steering wheel and
mm,
you don't really know where you're going, being that I am a believer, I have immense faith. I
mm,
will say on a routinely basis every single day, I love the feeling of, and I choose exactly what it is that how I want the day to go. I love the feeling of everything going right. I love the feeling of everything going perfectly. And so I'll either say, I'll say one or the other, and then I'll take a deep breath in, and then I just release. And then from there, I love going through the day and seeing how things happen without needing to control the outcome, because I know that I already put it out to exactly how I want it to go. Now that doesn't mean that it's going to go exactly the way I want it to go. That doesn't
mm,
mean that it's going to be perfect to
mm,
how I see it going perfectly, because sometimes I need to be of service. Sometimes I need to show up for somebody, and that doesn't mean that it's going to benefit me. It's just being willing, and being in obedience, and being in service. And I can tell you that the quality of my life ever since doing this has been insane. Insane.
yeah.
And so and again, it goes back to that, say thank you. If you do believe, if you have a, some, say thank you, and then you can say whatever, or you can just say thank you, I am living in ultimate bliss, thank you, right? For me, I say thank you God, I am living in ultimate bliss, thank you God. And I'll say that repeatedly, probably, I'll set a timer and I'll keep saying it over and over and over again. And as soon as I'm done with that, the world may not have, I go back into the same situations. Whenever I go back into my day to day, and I start to see the things of gratitude, of just sheer gratitude. Have you ever been around somebody who's ungrateful?
Mm, yeah, for sure.
And
Yeah.
does it not trigger in your mind a feeling of disdain and hatred?
Yeah, it's just that energy. Yeah.
Yeah. We can't stand it. We as human
Yeah.
beings, we want to see
Yeah.
somebody who, if you're in that energy, people want you to be humbled. Like
Mm,
somebody who did something wrong, and you see it, and then it, things transpire in their life and people are like, yeah, well, it's that energy, right? It's like, yet we inherently do that. We inherently know that. And so your only job, I say this routinely, at least this is what I believe. Your only job is to stay in alignment, that
Mm,
be in service of that, staying in alignment.
man.
And I'll ask myself like 3 or 4 times a day, am I in alignment? And with alignment, I mean, are my actions working towards what it is that I need to accomplish? Am I in alignment with my blueprint? Am I in alignment with my non-negotiables? Am I in alignment with the life that how I want to look back on this? And
And I
so,
think, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, it goes into that value system concept, right? And so I think, as you kind of think about the person that's just like, I just want all the money or I want all the things. Absolutely, you can pursue that. But as you kind of talked about, right, there's more to life than that. And so what other value systems are there? And so if you continue to return to, I am simple, I am simple, I am simple, then from there, whatever you achieve, if you're living into that, it's just kind of like extra stuff, like, and you get your goal, you hit your goal, you're doing those things, but your value is not driven into, hey, I hit this dollar, right? Like I heard the other day on the podcast, Sal Masakela, who's like a announcer in the X Games and different stuff. He was talking about like how many funerals have you been to where they get up at the front and they're like, this person died with this much money in their bank account. Like that just doesn't happen, you know?
it's not how
But
that
yeah,
goes.
but
Yeah,
you're like, oh, this person gave, so much time to this group of people, or this person showed up for me, or these stories that you hear. And so when your value is in servicing other people, it's going to get you to whatever that result you're leaning to if you do what the stuff you're talking about. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't align with what you're doing, it's probably not going to feel good.
right.
And there's going to come to that point of what am I seeking? What am I trying to achieve? If I feel so terrible trying to get there. I mean, the amount of people I'm sure you meet, I mean, I've met them too. And I've been in those places where you're like pursuing this goal. It's completely out of line with what you want to be doing, but you feel like that's what you're supposed to be doing or what status tells you to do. And then could you make a ton of money doing it? For sure. Right. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people is their pursuit to get to that place is just out of line with what they're trying to get to.
Yeah, yeah, you got to be in alignment with who you are,
Yeah.
and then from that there is that we keep ourselves from the things that we want. We don't let ourselves have those things, and
Mm,
so you have to see yourself being, you know, be be it that you are worthy or deserving or that,
mm,
and that's the other side of it because okay, so I will go down this train of thought.
mm.
Sometimes I pause to make sure that because
Yeah.
it's good to think before you speak. Um, Something that I just recently ran into, which I thought was outstanding. It was such a breakthrough for myself because I was always somebody who did the same thing. Like I'd want these things, and then I would not do the things that were necessary to accomplish them, or I wouldn't be in service of the right things, and then I wouldn't make myself of service to to the people who could even help me. I would just only think, it was this frame of mind of like, well, where's mine? Like, where are these opportunities? What's going right? It's like, and that's not it. That's definitely not it. But there's another side of it where you will keep yourself from doing the things because you don't see yourself as worthy, or you just never believe that it could
Mm.
happen for you or for
Self-sabotage.
yourself. And so I want you to think of exactly again, so combine the two. You go back to um, what is it exactly? What's exactly what you want? If someone were to give you and you were to look back on it, you go, wow, that was exactly what I wanted. How did they know that?
Mm,
How did they know that? And then after you've done this for everything that you want, because you choose your life, everything that you want in life, then I want you to think to yourself, it should be. That sentence right there, it should be. And let me explain to the energy, because the sentence, when said without the energy, doesn't make any sense. But imagine you've worked in your garage, or you've worked on something, it was a laborsome problem. Like you built something.
mm,
You're building something. Whatever it is, you choose whatever it is that you're building it.
mm,
And hours go by, and then you've built this thing to completion. It's perfect. and it is now out on your front lawn, or it's sitting in your garage, or it's somewhere where people are excited to see it, and you know that people are going to see it tomorrow. And you go inside, you walk into your kitchen, you walk in, you sit down, you give, make yourself a glass of water, you have a sip because you just worked so hard that you were exhausted, and this is just so relieving and so wonderful. And then someone comes in to the kitchen and they ask you how your day went, and you tell them about the project that you just did and what you just created, and they're like, "Really? I just walked by there and it's not there. There's nothing there. What are you talking about?" And your immediate response is, "It should be." And then you go and what? You go and check and you go and make sure that it's there. And then with conviction, with pure conviction that it's there. You just worked on it. You just built this thing. You absolutely know that it's there. Is there any feeling of resistance there
Mhm.
whenever you think in that regard?
No, because it's a concept of assurance, right? So it's like
Assurance.
I'm assured that that's there either through my own actions or through what I believe. Like it's an assurance, right? Like I mean, it
Right.
goes back into the whole concept of like what makes delusion so hard to treat in the world of psychiatry, right? Because the brain has created an assurance to that meaning and
Mhm.
value, and all the things kind of align in that, and so you can like you're like it should be that way, because you have an assurance to it.
Precisely. So the things that you want to build, or the things that you want to have in your life, you need to build that assurance in that it is either here or it's coming. And
Mm,
that's the assurance of the actions that you're taking to accomplish it. So anytime you feel these roadblocks, because we'll feel resistance, and that's a big part of the book that I describe in the results blueprint, is overcoming resistance on a day-to-day basis. And there's a little
mm,
bio, or like a little mental hack that I use that works
mm,
really really well. But it's just getting out of the way of resistance, and then getting through that lack of assurance where we don't believe that it could work for us, or we don't believe that we should have it, or it's
mm,
these types of things. Whereas whenever
mm,
you have assurance that, well, it should already be there, right? Like if I want this, if I say this is my goal and that's how I'm going to accomplish it, it should already be in my life. And so then it's up to you. Do you take the
mm,
steps to accomplish it? Now, resistance is interesting because it's like a rubber band. At least this is what I found again in my own life. The days whenever I beat it and I go and I do the things where I was scared, or I was timid, or I didn't want to, or, you know, and then I overcome that fear or that challenge. For the rest of that day, I could do it again and again and again. I would be so good. I would have no resistance, and I would really get to, like, I can sprint at that point. And that's where, within the book, it explains this is the 4-step process for how we achieve these things that you may be feeling
mm,
resistance towards. But it's that, discovery phase, that later on, explorative phase of really seeing how good you can be that day. Whenever you go to sleep, at least for myself, this is what happens. I have to fight resistance all over again. It might be a little bit easier the next day,
mm,
but it's still there. There's still that rigid feeling of, or that resistance, as we all, as have come to describe it. It's a force, almost like gravity. And so it's our job to push through this, to break through that. And then it's through that conviction, right? You can't beat somebody if they have absolute unfaltering conviction. You can't, like, in the same way as you said with assurance.
mm,
There's no getting into their head that, like, right? If somebody literally stands there and just pure assurance, pure conviction, and you're like, eventually you're going to be like, whatever, just give them what they want. Like, there's no getting through to this person. There's literally no getting through to them. And that's where we have to be, because otherwise, y- um oh, I forget the exact quote of it, so I'm not going to use it. But yeah, I don't want to, like, butcher the quote. If you're unrelenting and you know exactly where you want to go, that's the only place that it's going to come from, is conviction and assurance. Now, this takes us to the very beginning of the book, where you are crafting your specific value statement. But you should have your specific value statement for everyone in your life, because this is where it gets really interesting. Because if I were to ask you, if I were around you every day and I were to say, what are the 3 things that I can do for you? What are the 3 things that I need to do every single day to show up to make your life incredible, to be the best version of myself for you, but also just sheerly to make your life outstanding? What do you need? What do you want in that regard? Well, once you answer that, and I show up for you in that way every single day, in only those ways, Is that not exactly what we're all looking for? Like, we don't need a lot.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
from that, I don't waste the effort. I don't have any all of a sudden there's misunderstandings. I was doing this. Why aren't you grateful? I was doing this. Why is right? It's all from a place of again being in service. And being in service, you have to take that big step back and say, I don't know everything. I don't know, and that's okay. I'm gonna find out.
mhm.
Right. And so we do this for not only in service of our goals, as we've talked about with our key moves, but then in service of the people around us, of life in general. And
Yeah,
so
and so
from
like,
this, oh
yeah,
yeah.
what I hear in that too, as my brain's kind of just thinking about this and like how do you apply this in life, like in the concept of assurance. There's assurance because it outlines within your value system, right? So if whatever you're doing doesn't even align with who you are, then you can't have an assurance anyways, because there's already like this doesn't align with who I am. So I think it makes so much sense that you got to have your value systems right off the bat, because without that, you can't have assurance on a lot of things. Because ultimately, there's still part of you that's still saying, "Hey, man, that's not what you should be doing. But that's not where you're at. That's not your thing." And so it's like people sometimes just kind of push that down, right? It's like, oh, stop. I'm just going to keep grinding, keep doing it. But then when you take that assurance and you take that value system, you're then serving others in a way that's not meeting your own needs. That's like people pleasing, but rather it's just showing up for people in a way that it aligns with who you are.
Hmm.
It's like using your gifts to improve the world, to help the world, rather than, hey, I'm doing this so you'll like me, or hey, I'm doing this so you'll see me. And I think that's something that's really big in all that is you hear that, and some people may think like, oh, well, that's just people pleasing. And that's not. I think there's two different versions of that. And I think when you're living into yourself, you're serving. When you're living into someone else, you're people pleasing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think absolutely. And let me know if this is like
Yeah.
doesn't really track. Just let me know.
Yeah.
But I believe personally that trying that word to try, TRY, or trying, is the ultimate of illusion.
Mm,
That's really where I stand in that. And so in the same way that you're describing, like if people pleasing, right? People pleasing was that you were trying to make somebody happy. People pleasing was you were trying to get them to see you,
mm,
trying to rather than just standing in your value. And then you're one conversation away from knowing exactly what those people want, exactly what
mm,
somebody needs, and then
mm,
just doing that in the same way where people will get it to where they want to do something and they try and they try and they try, and you're like, there have been a lot of us here on this planet and I can guarantee you that someone has figured out how to do this.
mm,
So it's fine if your calling is to only do right, like you're doing this where your trial and error is because you are creating something new that's never been done, and that's what
mm,
is your purpose, and you know that deep down, as opposed to someone who's just trying to get rich, trying to do this, but they want to do it their own way. It goes back to I use this, but it finally hit me, and I'd never really, and again, if anybody has seen the movie and wants to judge me on that, that's fine. But the Matrix, like whenever
Spoiler
he's like,
alert.
stop.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, right. So, but stop trying to hit me and hit me. That's like such a profound thing. Once I looked at it in that regard, and it was from actually. I can tell you, I took it upon myself. I really wanted to learn the Rubik's cube, and so I did. But what'll happen is you get it in your hand, and you don't want to mess it up, or you'll get one side done, and you don't want to mess the rest of it up. Which is funny because it's an algorithm. It's like simple steps where
Mm,
it's just step by step by step by step.
mm,
So there's no messing it up. You
yeah.
just got lucky and happened to, but you're trying to solve it as opposed to just following the steps and solving it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's almost, I think one thing that, like, talking like that Rubik's Cube concept is like, it also looks really messy on the way to the fix.
mhm,
You know, it like a lot, like, and I think what happens for a lot of people, I'm not a Rubik's Cube person. I don't know if I've ever even done one like completely, but it almost seems, and I think this happens in life a lot, the reason I bring it up is that we'll get one side of something perfect, and then you're afraid to shift anything else around because that one side's perfect. And so then you're messing with this other stuff when really things have got to get kind of chaotic in itself to then be able to get to that place where it's fully whole.
right.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on.
And so with that as well, because it's a layered process, and whenever you first start out to go do all these things, it looks chaotic, and if you don't know what you're looking for, you'll never solve it. But whenever you are just going step by step and understanding that, and so again, going back to that of service, in service of others, you don't fully understand something until you've taught it, or until you can teach it, and the only way to teach something is to be in service of something, because I can tell you right now I've done it myself, and it doesn't feel good. I think all of us have done this,
Mhm.
where we think that we're teaching something but we're just speaking,
Mm.
because the person didn't ask to learn it. The person what isn't interested in it. You
Mm.
know what I mean? And so there's a
Yeah.
difference of where somebody who really comes to you is like, "Oh, you know how to do that? Will you teach me?" And you're like, "Yeah." And then you're working with them on building these neural pathways, and there's something out I mean, it's service, it's community, it's really powerful. I tell people who are in relationships or who want to build stronger relationships with their partners is to do that, right? Like have somebody learn something and have the other one
Mhm.
actually show up and want to listen and learn. Because how many times are they just like talking at each other, and that the walls don't come down, and people just they won't
Yeah.
let that in. Whereas you look at couples who are like, you're like, you guys are gonna last, because they are just like, they take, what's being said, and they really absorb it. They allow it in.
Mhm.
Anyways, this isn't a
No, but
but
and I
going
think
back
that's
to
kind of
Austin.
what I think that's you highlight how this book can really be applied into so many aspects of your life. And I think that's what's cool. Like when you see a book, like if I know you do that. You taught me this, right? Like if you're like walking down and like you're looking in the aisle, and so it's like who's going to read that book, right? There's a lot of times like you would look at a book that says the results blueprint, and you're like, man, that is just straight get me my whatever I want, right? But
Yeah,
really, what this whole book is about is how do you achieve whatever it is, right? Better relationship, better job, money, fitness, whatever you're trying to achieve, but it's not based out of just get me, right? Like it can be used to so many aspects of life. And I think that's what makes it so cool is that like you can use it in a marriage. You can use it in community. You can use it in business. You can use it in your own life. You can use it in health. I mean, it just hits all the domains in a way of using those buy statements, finding your value, all the things you've kind of talked about, which is radical, but it all goes back to service.
absolutely. Even if someone wanted to argue or debate or have a dialectic, I never argue or debate. I just have dialectics, because I'm never under the illusion that I'm right or that I know everything. Right? There's only facts. There's no right. And so, with that being said, you could say factually that somebody could take just the strategy and the dominate and only do those things, and technically it would look like, well, they're not in service of anyone. So why is it said that it's always in service of something? But then it's okay, that might be true, but then you're still in service of your gifts, of your talents. That's where everybody should start to begin with, as we talked about with the surfing aspect, or with
Mhm.
language, or even if you want to be a professional artist. You don't start out by just, and you can be extremely gifted and have a higher threshold of your practice, uh, gains more results quicker, but you're still starting out in service of learning the songs, or learning how to paint, or learning, and you may just have this stroke of intuition or the stroke of genius, as we describe it, but you're still in service of that. And it's the day that you stop being in service of that, that you lose your artistry, or you lose yourself. That's where we see these artists lose their identities and lose their
Well,
minds.
and I think you kind of brought up too, where you can, just from like reading the book, you could take some concepts and achieve a goal. But the whole concept, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, is not to achieve the goal and look back and be like, man, really wish I would have done those other things in my life. You know, to do all the process, to do every step gets you to your place where you feel well, you're living into yourself, your values are aligned, and you have achieved a version of your goal rather than achieving a version of your goal without focusing on the other stuff and just destroying your life to get there. And I think
Right.
that's what makes it so interesting is that you could pick up that book and you could get to that end goal. But man, what does your life look like? What do you want your life to look like, as you've been saying? Like, what values are you wanting to live in? How are you using service in that? All those things. That's what makes it so different, in my opinion. It's radical.
Yeah, and you get to the point where you actually hit these moments of results or these moments of accomplishment. And how many of us have had them? I mean, we all have in some form or fashion. And the moment is so fleeting.
Mm,
It's gone, and you're surrounded by everything else you didn't visualize.
mm,
And that's, I mean, what life do you want to live? I choose to live in ultimate bliss. I choose to make sure that the relationships around me are thriving to the best of my ability. Now,
mm,
now again, people have free will, so you have to accept that as well. There's a balance. You know, you show
mm,
up, you give, you are in service of, and but always remember as well that equally as much, you, because I've learned this. Oh, this is fun. I want people to start doing this. And now, because I can I say this?
do it. Work for it.
Okay. I love doing this. I started doing this a few years ago. I want you to start tracking. You can do this in 6 months to a year. This isn't in the book, so that's why I got excited. I wanted to tell people. I want you to start looking back or analyzing, because you'll start by looking back and you can start to go forward afterwards. But start analyzing what you learned the year before. What was life teaching you, right? And so I've learned a few things. I've learned to hold with an open hand. I've learned to that you. I mean, it's so cliche, but you can't pour from an empty cup. And you start to learn these really cool things. And if you can put a sentence on, and but try to keep it to one sentence. You can like voice it out in a note and like, well, I went through this and I
Mm,
went through this and I went through this. And you'll see and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I learned this. Right.
mm.
And it's this wisdom that you
Yeah,
actually went
wisdom.
through. And so
Mm,
so I think it's really important that people know that yes, this results blueprint is powerful and it will. But again, it's that keeping in service of yourself as well, like keep, because that's what the change blueprint describes and teaches. As we've gone over a few of those principles here today, which I'll be writing, soon and
mm,
publishing. You get to create this seed and version of yourself and let it grow. And so it's still on you to show up for that. For you are still showing up for yourself, because it can't come from out here. It's never going to come from out here. It has
mm,
to start from within. You have to show up for yourself and build this energy,
mm,
and then it'll expand. And then from that, then that allows you to be in service. And whenever you are handling that for yourself, then you find it to be extremely easy, because again, the value and the societal whatever is okay. Like it's not from that. It was always from this being in service of myself, and showing up for my mental health, my physical health, and that'll keep you, that'll keep you busy. But it's
mm.
it's so important.
Yeah, and I think too, like I'm very aware as well, like it's not circumstantial driven. Like I think a lot of times you could read some of these things. You could even be listening to this episode and be thinking like, well, yeah, that works if like life's cool for you, right? Or like, that works if you're not a minority, or that works for you if you're not marginalized. But what if you're on these other places? But I think what you bring up in the concept is that no matter what culture you're living in, no matter where you find yourself and the circumstances you're in, if you're living into your value system out of the service of the people around you, you're gonna get the goals that you're trying to achieve and what that looks like. But as soon
Yeah,
as you start to compare, or as soon as you start to do other things, you start to look outside of yourself, or you look outside of that world, then you kind of lose that ability to say, I'm living into my value system, or I'm living into like, out of service. And so I think that's pretty interesting too, because it could be easy to get into that role and be like, well, I can try these buy statements, but man, my life just isn't where I want it to be, or like, oh, I don't have those resources, or I don't have that time, or I don't have the thing, and so then I can't get there. But I think if you're living into the value system and you know what that is, then it reaches through the circumstances.
absolutely. I mean, to go with that in that regard, because this actually tracks perfectly. And as I said, buy the book, don't buy the book. I don't care if you want these results. Awesome. You can listen to this back a couple of times, and you'll have most of what we go over. If you want to be able to see it, cool. But this is what I'll say with that. Like if you feel like you don't have the time, it's something that I described. The bridge to only is at least. That's all you need to know. So the bridge to only is at least. So the only things you should be doing are your three main things every single day if you're in alignment towards this goal, if you really want to get it done in 90 days, if it's a massive goal, right? And so doing one thing, at least one thing a day, is like a placeholder, right? You still showed up. You're You won't forget where it's like a, you won't forget where you were, and also your ego doesn't get a chance to come in and beat you up, right? Like it likes to do. Now, the other
Yeah.
side of this is in the same way that your best is, what does that even mean, right? Like we are trying to achieve our best every
Mhm.
single day. That means something different every single day because there's so many variables across the board.
Mhm.
No day is the same. Every moment's different. So what we do is it's called the why is the term escaping me now? Anyways, I just because it's I didn't really give like a fun name to it. It's just called the secret weapon. And so the secret weapon is what I've used to continuously show up and really push myself to do great things. And so what that is the last set of anything that you're doing, even if it's like you set up 3 sets of something, or you set up a certain amount of time, or let's say you only get a chunk of time, the last 10 minutes or the last 20 minutes, or however this may work, um, at that point in time, one action, after one action, you can quit. Right. So let's say, because the easiest way to kind of make this visualize is working out. Let's say you're working out, you're doing 3 sets of 10 reps. First 2 sets, you do all 10 reps. The last one, if you do 1 rep, you can quit. Now, what I found by doing this, because I do it in everything now, if I'm writing, if I'm working, if I'm that, it forces your mind to say, whatever, we're not even doing the last set. Like we're good. Let's just only do the
Mhm.
beginning and then we're done. So it cuts quitting. It cuts that narrative in your mind from the very beginning, where usually you're not even fighting the resistance of your body, of the whatever. It's all in your mind. Because as we know, once you've hit that feeling of failure or that feeling of exhaustion, you've only gone like 60. It's either
Mhm.
60 or 40%. I'm not going to try to
Mhm.
act like I'm smarter than I
Right.
am, but
Right.
from that, on that last set, you get into it, and what happens? You do the 1 rep, and then that resistance flips against your quitting. And so you're like, this is what happens. We always quit. We always get to this moment and we don't push through. This is why we wonder why we're here. Now, of course, you don't want these like
Mhm.
negative thoughts, but and eventually they'll, like you kind of get
Yeah.
through that. But
Yeah.
you're dominating who you were the day before. And so what I like about this, or why this has worked for me, is because whenever I'm really honest with myself, sometimes I just don't have the time. Sometimes I do have something else going on. Sometimes my body is giving me all the signals that, hey, you're in risk of an injury, or hey,
Mhm.
we need to shut this down today, like, and that's okay, because at that point in time that was my best. And so I showed up, I did it, and I reached my best. And so I can honestly say, tracking back, I've strung together my best days every single day. Now, even I don't string together all my best days.
Mhm.
I wish I did.
Yeah.
But
That's the
it's all
goal.
about getting better.
Yeah, and it's the scalability of being able to scale down to where you're at, and can you just do a little bit more, right? Like, you hear David Goggins talk a lot about that when he like runs those like really long way, all those like long distances, that he doesn't like to know like where the end goal is because he doesn't ever want his brain to get to a place where he's like, I just got to go to that place. Like I
Right.
don't want to just say like, oh, I'm only going to run a mile, and then you know exactly where that mile's at, and you hit to that mile, and you're like, yep, done. Like you want to be able to say like, I'm just going to go to this one spot and then go a little bit longer, go a little bit harder, a little bit farther on the days that you can do it. And then if there's
Yeah.
days you can't, scale it down, know where you're at, and yeah, man, I like
Yeah,
this.
I would recommend doing in regards to what you were saying about David Goggins, like if you have something where you say you need to do 10, you need to do 100. Like tell yourself you need to do 100, because your mind will, like, there's that like, weird buffer where it knows, and then it starts to like try to compress it, and you get all that resistance. Whereas if you're way out there, it never happens. So
Yeah, man, it's radical. So if you're listening to this, or like let's say you have someone that's listening to this, or that or like comes in contact with this, they're like, I don't really know if this is kind of like for me. Like, how could you help them? Like, what do you think they should know to kind of jump into this and kind of make these shifts in their life?
oh, that's a great question. If you know what you want or you don't know what you want, if you have a goal or you don't have a goal, if you are enjoying your life or you're tired of how your life is going, then this book is for you, because is going to help you engineer something that you may have thought possible, may have never thought possible.
Mhm.
I can only speak from the fact of what it's done for my life and what it continues to do for my life. And give it a try.
Yeah.
And what else can I say to that regard? Because I actually want to answer the question in a different way. That is what initially came out. But for someone who is thinking that this won't work for you, that let's put it this way: if you think that things are hopeless, or you think that there's no way out, then just know that I've been there and I understand that deeply. And if that's where you're at right now, then simply one step at a time every single day, and only control your input. Only control the input of your thoughts
Mhm.
and what you say about yourself.
Mhm.
And I could go deeper into things that I myself have had to do because Josh, you know a lot about my past. And it yes, start with showing up for that relationship for yourself. And once you are able to heal that and you will get everything else you're looking for. It all starts from within. We want to look without. We want to run. We want to do all these things. And I can tell you honestly, because I've done that. And
Mhm.
so if that's where you're at, if that's who I'm speaking to, then I can tell you from firsthand experience that it is possible and you have everyone rooting for you.
Mhm.
I'm one of them. So
Mm. Man, thanks for sharing that.
100%. Absolutely.
Powerful, man. I love that concept that like if you're at a place where you can't do anything, or you feel like you can't do anything, just focus on what you're putting in. Because so many times it's all about what you're giving out. But if you get to that place at the end, or you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing, just focus about what you're putting in. And if you focus on what you're putting in, you try to shift that in some way, man, something can shift. I love it, man. So how can people find this book? It comes out on the 23rd. Where's it going to be
Yeah.
at? What's that
Comes out
look
on the
like?
23rd. It's gonna be on Amazon. It's for ebook and for regular book. And then I think about a week after, Audible has a different way of letting that through. So that'll be going live. And then also, if you would like to learn more, or you'd like to work more with me, there's also courses and everything that has been designed so that way, if you want to work hand like one on one, you want somebody who comes in and actually helps you to get those results, then absolutely, I've been doing it for years with on a larger scale with corporations, and so I feel like I can say that I know a little bit of how to cut through the noise and help in that regard. And so with that, it would be having access to me on a day to day basis, and also a community of people who are also working might be in the same shoes as you. And so definitely something to take a look at. You can find it on my socials. Pretty soon, all those links will be going live. So on the 23rd, all of those links will be going live. If you're watching this after April 23rd, 2025, those links are already live. You can go check them out. Would love to have you. You can shoot me a DM, or you can write any kind of comment, and I'm good about responding as well, because I've also been in that scenario where you know um, as we just talked about. So my goal is again to be in service and to make change and to be a great
Mhm.
man and to leave this world better than, well, I'm not going to say better than I found it, because I always think that's so cliche, because that makes it seem like the world isn't good, and
Yeah, right.
I live in the
Well,
belief that
and
the
I
world is
think
amazing.
yeah, and all those links will be in the show notes. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it's going to be right down below. Like if you see the video, if it's on the podcast, it'll be there in the show notes. We'll also have some stuff on the Middle Maps of Instagram. That's a way to kind of connect with Connor and kind of the stuff that he's doing. But brother, man, this is like, man, we could talk on this for hours, man. Like it is
Oh, always.
so good stuff. But I think that, man, I leave this conversation just like wanting to reevaluate. Like, am I living into my value systems? Is it something that feels in alignment? And like, what does that look like putting by statements with the things you desire? And then within that, am I doing it out of service or am I doing it out of me? Which, gosh, bro, that's like a, a whole thing. It's cool, man. Thank you,
Yeah.
brother. It was
Hey,
awesome.
always, always. And hey, don't forget to create your value statement, live in conviction. Best thing you can do, it all starts from there, starts from within. This has been a blast. I can't wait for it.
Awesome, brother. Thank you, man.
Always.
See you, man.
See you.